Thanks for watching live or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Hello. Finally, we're live. Slightly later than billed. Huge apologies. The technical gremlins will get you wherever you are. You're, of course, listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Let's just talk it out. It's a real pleasure to be back. Ironic that today's show is how to de-stress, and this show is slightly later than billed, mainly because I didn't properly work out how to use our new platform. As you may know, we are still broadcasting on Teachers Talk Radio, but with a slight difference. It's now coming to you live on YouTube and wherever you may choose to watch the show. That's where it's coming from. You can, of course, still listen again on the Podbean app, and that's all good. But ultimately, this is the Sunday Breakfast Show with Phin Adams, live on a Sunday, most Sundays at 9 a.m. Although this week, and actually I've not joined you for the last couple of weeks. Hope you've had a good half term, by the way. Are you feeling refreshed? Are you ready to go? Final stretch should, in theory, be that little bit easier as exam classes go, if you do teach exam classes. I tend to find, though, this half term comes in peaks and troughs. Thank you to Paul Foz messaging in saying, hope you can de-stress too. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that's what we've all got to do. But yeah, it comes in peaks and troughs, I find, because what do you do with your gain time? What do you do when you gain time? Do you make use of it? Well, I find that sometimes it's less stressful actually teaching the classes. When you get gain time, you realize 1,001 things that you should or shouldn't be doing. And that can almost be more stressful. Do you get what I mean? Do you get what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Anyway, we are talking the resilient personality on today's show. How essentially you as a teacher can build up or realize your resilient personality. I think it can come with experience. That was my first reflection when I was planning today's show. What actually is the resilient personality? So we're going to talk about that. In a slight change, you can't any longer call in to the show, but you can still message the show. Just type in the comments box. We are completely live and you can get involved in the conversation and share your thoughts by tagging us at Teachers Talk Radio, and I will pick it up in the comments. And of course, if you're listening again, you can just do the same on the Podbean app. So that's all good. We are completely live and we're talking then the resilient personality. Now, no one likes to feel stressed, but some people are particularly skilled at coping with upsetting events, aren't they? And just carrying on. We all work with people, whether it's in the classroom or wherever, that just seem to cope with stress better. Now, I'd like to think I know a thing or two about psychology, but it turns out when there's a stressful event, I find I just go into not meltdown, but I dwell on the stress, right? So what I thought is we could talk today about qualities that maybe you could develop as a teacher. And if you can't develop them as a teacher, maybe you can learn from others. I don't think anyone is born with a particular resilient personality. I think these are skills that you can develop, and I think there's always hope. So I suppose I should title today's show, What's the Secret to Building Resilience as a Teacher? What's the secret to building resilience as a teacher? That should be the title of today's show. And how can we develop it ourselves? Rachel Dias, a Brazilian psychologist, said resilience is not invulnerability to stress, but rather the ability to recover from negative events. So we all go through negative events. It's about your ability to recover from it. At the risk of putting in a cliche, I was at a garden centre earlier this week, brilliant, and I saw this plaque. It said, grow through what you go through. I nearly bought it, but it was £15. So I thought, no, not going to do that. Not going to buy it. Teacher salary. But what is resilience? Well, the word actually comes from a Latin verb, Resilire, and that means to leap back. To leap back. And I thought that was really interesting looking at that etymology to begin with, because that is a fascinating way of framing something. A fascinating way of framing something, simply because when you have a resilient personality, it isn't necessarily something that you... Well, what am I trying to say here? Maybe I need to frame what I'm thinking about before I just come out with it. But if a resilient person is meaning to leap back, right, then we can conclude a resilient person isn't someone who never suffers, who doesn't ever go through suffering, whether it's in the classroom or in life, but one who can suffer and spring back again. So leap back, maybe the essence of it is actually leaping forward. But I suppose I'm a little bit confused why it is leap back. And I'm thinking about this live with you here. But I suppose if we frame it as a quality, well, how can we frame it? A quality that can help us to successfully endure stressful times. That might help. I mean, studies have confirmed that resilient individuals show a really small increase of the stress hormone cortisol when under pressure. But a very small increase compared to others. So there might be something in that. So what actually is a resilient personality? Well, if some people can cope with stress particularly well, does that mean they're lucky? Well, my thinking is no. So I teach psychology. I know a little bit about psychology. I'm not an expert, and this is by no means therapy. But if some people cope with stress well, I don't think it's a skill they were born with. I think it's a skill they've learned. So resilience isn't necessarily a personality trait that you're born with, your innate disposition, if you buy into that. And of course, no one's immune to the challenges of life. Now, what do the studies say? Well, a European team of psychologists put it in 2013, a dynamic and adaptive process. So what I took from that when I was researching today's show is we can essentially learn to be resilient. And I guess it's about choosing the reaction, and how we choose to react to adversity can make all the difference. So we're going to be talking about that on today's show. That is the plan. Technical issues aside, time now for the news right here on Teachers Talk Radio.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Schools Week covers news that academies in a 24-school MAT are to transition to other chains as Department for Education plans one of the biggest ever trust closures. The ATLP MAT has a large 7-figure deficit, has faced staff walkouts across many of its schools, announced redundancies, and its CEO has resigned. The DFE has stated that all the Trust's academies should now move to a small number of high-performing regionally based MATs. A spokesperson for the ATLP said that whilst financial progress had been made, it had not been enough. TES magazine says Ofsted will update its toolkits to clarify its approach to disadvantage. The move comes amid criticism that schools with more disadvantaged intakes are less likely to hit expected standard on achievement. This trend is confirmed in published figures showing 43% of schools with an above average proportion of pupils on free school meals fell below the expected standard, compared with 16% of schools with a below average number of free school meal pupils. From next month, Ofsted will make it clear that when looking at whether a school is as expected, the attainment of free school meal pupils is compared with that of free school meal pupils in other schools rather than with overall national averages. Union response and further details can be found on TES. The BBC says that the Department for Education has received backlash over its collaboration with TV reality personality Gemma Collins to promote post-16 education on social media. People questioning the inclusion of the Only Way is Essex star and Send campaigners angry with government spending on provision for pupils have been the most critical. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson has responded to the negative comments as outright snobbery and as downright unpleasant, and argued that Collins had a reach that politicians can't. The BBC says that Collins chose to collaborate with the Department for Education in order to highlight alternative options for young people who feel university is not for them. Finally, the government announced on its website that children with SEND were at the forefront of discussions at the launch of the Education World Forum, as the Education Secretary launched a new international SEND alliance. In a speech, she called on countries to join an alliance of nations to share experiences, proven approaches, and agree clear actions in a shared mission to deliver opportunity for all children with SEND. Full details can be found on the government website. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Thanks, Joe. And we're back. We're live here on a Sunday morning. I hope you are okay. Fascinating, that, isn't it, about reality TV? I've actually dibbled and dabbled in that world. Interesting that there's a backlash then with Gemma Collins and then Bridget Phillipson's defense of that. What do you think of Bridget Phillipson? Thoughts in the comments box. Feel free. This is a live show. We are live on a Sunday. And as always, when I do this show, after the news, we take a look at the papers. So let's take a look at the Sunday papers. These are some interesting stories that you could maybe bring into the classroom on a Monday or later in the week, if that works for you, bringing in some links and things. Agony for Arsenal and 5 cops axed at Kensington Palace. Those are the main headlines, actually. So several editions of the papers focus, of course, on Arsenal's Champions League loss to Paris Saint-Germain on Saturday evening. Did you watch it? Did you listen to it? I don't have streaming rights, so I just listened to it on a radio station. Not Teachers. We could have broadcast. Imagine that. Not really anything to do with teachers, though, is it? So, yeah, wouldn't make sense if we did. But ultimately, it was a gripping final. To all intents and purposes. I just tuned in for the penalty shootout. So I'm sure many of our students will be talking about that this week, and you could introduce that into the classroom, the power of sport. That could work. Yeah. So the Sunday Times, their caption, a photograph of defender Gabriel Magalhães. That's the person who missed one of the penalties, I believe. I think that's right. It was the crucial one. It was sudden death, and he misses. So the main story for the paper is also an interview with former Health Secretary Wes Streeting, in which he says the government should consider cutting employer national insurance contributions to encourage businesses to hire more young people. Sunday Telegraph, benefit checks watered down. So that is the Sunday Telegraph's headline, accusing UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer of watering down checks on welfare benefits claimants as new rules come into effect this week, which will allow people to receive a personal independence payment for 4 years after their initial assessment, and then a further 6 years after a review. The paper says that claimants face reviews as often as every 9 months under the current system. So that is there. It also writes that officials are warning that urgent changes to the welfare assessment system are needed, with the record number of people claiming PIPs costing the British taxpayer of £26 billion per year. The Sun on Sunday, exclusive, Raheem crash witness. He was going fast on the wrong side of the road. So this is the headline and a picture of him. The Met Police have launched an investigation into allegations there. And As well as that, you've got 5 cops axed by royals. So Kensington Palace has banned 5 royal protection officers from the premises following a complaint from a female member of staff. And this is according to The Sun on Sunday. The Mail, BBC bias row after Desert Island Disc bans Farage, or Farage. How do you say his name? So this is the Daily Mail focusing on what's calling a BBC bias row, reporting that BBC Radio 4's flagship programme has banned Reform UK leader Nigel Farage from appearing on the programme. The BBC responded to a request for comment, telling the paper, "We don't ban any individuals from appearing on Desert Island Discs, and that includes Mr. Farage," or Mr. Farage. The Observer, they've got a picture of, this is actually quite a good, so this might be something you display in the classroom if you can get a copy of the Observer newspaper. It's quite an artistic, head-grabbing, quite literally head-grabbing front page that they've got, simply because they've used a mashup of 4 different faces. So you got Rachel Sylvester. So you could take away the captions and actually get your pupils to guess. There's a quiz for you. There it is. Planned all your lessons this week. You're sorted. Just stay with us on Teachers Talk Radio. We'll do it for you. Rachel Sylvester is one of the people. Andy Burnham. You've got Tony Blair. And you've got, well, that also looks like Keir Starmer, but they've not put him in. You got Tony Blair, Rachel Sylvester, Andy Burnham, and Andrew Rawnsley. Now, all of those, they've just used a little bit of their face. That's all they've done. And the headline is Labour rips itself apart. So it's a composite image, I think you'd call it, if you do art, built from the faces of prominent figures in the Labour Party. But they've not used Keir Starmer, although it looks like they have. The top bit. So there's the debate. Sunday Express, Keir's EU reset will keep food inflation high. So this is the Express honing in on Sir Keir's flagship trade deal with the European Union, writing that food and drink manufacturers are warning that the new agreement could push up prices even further. The paper also says it will require more than 400 UK regulations to be brought into line with EU legislation, and firms will need at least 2 years to adapt. Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs has rejected the plea and insists the new deal must come into effect by mid-2027. Kids' social media ban within weeks. Now, that is a topic you could definitely talk about in the classroom. I'm sure there'll be a lot of opinions. This is the front page of the Sunday Mirror, suggesting a social media ban for children could be announced within weeks after it interviewed Liz Kendall. The full interview is in their paper, the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology. She tells the paper that a ban is definitely on the table and warns that something drastic has to happen to support parents who are concerned about the impact of social media use on their children. So that is their headline. Sunday People, Andrew emails sent to Palace. So this is Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. We've got a real variety of headlines on this Sunday, haven't we? You could bring into the classroom just after half term, feeling refreshed. So Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is pictured on the front page of this paper, and saying Buckingham Palace was given emails 6 years ago that appeared to show that the former prince was sharing confidential information. Daily Star, I didn't cheat on Maya. So this is the Daily Star saying that the Manchester City footballer Ruben Dias has insisted he didn't cheat on ex-girlfriend Maya Jama. And then you've got the Independent with the Pride list of 2026. The front page, including photographs of the famous faces who have made the rankings. Comedian and broadcaster Alan Carr. You've got, actually, here's another quiz question. These are famous faces. How many do your students recognize? Because we don't live in a monoculture, do we? That's another thing. So actually, what we, gone are the days of the Noel Edmonds house party and the days where everyone would know, everyone would watch something on a Friday, Saturday night. Other than the show Traitors, we don't really all watch things together anymore, do we? So which of these faces will your pupils know? You could just display that picture from the front page of the Independent. So I can recognize Alan Carr. I can recognize actually 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, but I can only name 3 of those 4. There's 9. So Alan Carr, I can recognize Rosie Jones. I can recognize Zach Polanski. There's others there. Those are your headlines right here on Teachers Talk Radio. Can't do the headlines, though, without the weather. If you're teaching in a British school, are you going to be sweltering in the heat? It has been a heat wave, and I am very glad it's been half term, because teaching in a classroom when it's above 30 degrees is really tricky. Tricky for the pupils, tricky for you, tricky for everyone in between. We're just not built for it, aren't we? We don't have... I'm not saying as a human, I'm saying British buildings are not built for British summers anymore. Whether that's down to global warming or whether that's down to just a lack of, well, I suppose it is funds, because to install an air conditioning unit into a classroom and to a whole set of classrooms is going to be really expensive. Although it is arguably necessitated now, isn't it? So there we are. We grit and bear, and the buildings aren't really designed. Most buildings, providing they don't have rack in them, most buildings aren't really designed for temperatures above 30 degrees. So what's it going to look like this week? Well, today's going to be cloudy with the odd spot of rain in the morning. As the afternoon progresses, it will become dry and largely sunny. Tonight, we're looking at a dry and largely clear night with just a few patches of cloud by dawn. So when you start the week, back to school tomorrow, it's going to be a cloudy day with the odd spot of rain in the morning. Wet in the afternoon, spells of rain and showers pushing in from the west. The outlook for Tuesday to Thursday. Tuesday is going to see a pretty cloudy start with the odd shower. In the afternoon, further heavy thundery showers will develop, but most of them will ease off in the evening. And after a dry and mostly sunny start on Wednesday, it will turn cloudy with the odd shower moving in. Sunny spells will develop as the day progresses, and Thursday could be partly cloudy with showers. So we'll take that. We'll take that on Teachers Talk Radio. We'll take that in the classroom. Feel free to message in, by the way, if you'd like to. I am broadcasting live on a Sunday. You're listening to the Sunday. I sang it then, didn't I? You're listening to the Sunday Breakfast with Phin Adams live on TT Radio. You can listen live wherever you get your, wherever you join us live. Don't need to tell you where you can listen live. If you're joining live, you are listening live. Simple as that. That's all we need. You can, of course, listen again on the Podbean app after today's show, but I won't pick up your comments until next Sunday at 9. Time to hear from our sponsors right here on Teachers Talk Radio. And when we come back, we're going to be talking more about the resilient personality right here.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Well, it suddenly stops then. Normally we've got the sort of beat at the end, but we don't. I'm back live on a Sunday. We're talking the resilient personality, and I think, we're acknowledging then that resilience isn't invulnerability to stress, but the ability to recover from negative events, right? So I guess that links quite nicely to the power of self-efficacy. Not just self-efficacy in the classroom, but self-efficacy beyond the classroom as well. So that's got to be, well, a lot of psychologists will say that that's a major pillar of resilience. So this is the belief then, let's define it, the belief then that our actions have the power to affect our circumstances, right? So we call it, if we're going with Rutter's locus of control, we'd call it an internal locus of control rather than an external locus of control. Now, I've looked this up. There's a bit of an agreement that there are 4 key ways we can build self-efficacy in the classroom as teachers and beyond it. So essentially, as we develop as teachers, we can be alert to opportunities that increase one's sense of confidence and control in the face of stress in the classroom, right? So the first one of the 4 pillars, persevering through failures. So we've all had that terrible class. We've all had a difficult class. When you've got a difficult class, you think, I've survived worse than this. I'll manage. So it's that self-encouragement, self-affirmation that can help, persevering through failures. And maybe that, we used to have a feature on here called Food for Thought, but now the whole thing is food for thought. So I scrapped that feature in favor of just talking it out on Teachers Talk Radio. So yeah, persevering through failures, that's one of the pillars. Another pillar, finding good role models. So it could be there is a senior leader or a middle leader or another teacher or a teacher that you remember. I mean, we've all had teachers. I think as well, there's almost universal consensus for teachers that we've all had really good teachers that have inspired us to go into the classroom in the first place. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've never met a teacher who's not referenced a really good teacher in the past that slightly inspired them. It might not be the whole reason, but slightly inspired them. And they've also had bad teachers as well and made them think I could do better than that. I think I've had a mixture. So finding good role models, that's the second pillar. Another one, interpreting our feelings positively. So I'm feeling nervous. That's because I care. So I'm feeling nervous for this class. It's an exciting challenge or something along those lines. And then the last one, social persuasion, the final pillar. Social persuasion. So you listen to what others say when they give you encouragement. Yeah. It works, right? You listen to what others say. And that can be really useful. Social persuasion. What are your thoughts on that? Does that work? Those are the 4 pillars. Or those are the 4 pillars of resilience that psychologists say are really useful. And hopefully that helps. Hopefully. We'll talk more. But do message if you have any more thoughts. As I say, we have started the show a little bit late, so we're going to be going all the way up to 10:30. Hope that's okay. If not, feel free to message in and say, I won't be listening. Get off. We want to hear the next person on. Yes, technical gremlins. They trouble everyone. But I suppose the next bit I wanted to talk to you or talk with you about is creating a buffer. So when we face stressors that are so I guess the first thing that we've said, and I've said at the start of today's show, is stress is a part of life. All right. It's a certainty. You're going to face stress. That's it. But one of the things you can do is create a buffer. So when we face stressors that are an inevitable part of life, resilience can actually limit its impact if you can develop resilience, right? So a 2015 Brazilian study of people caring for family members actually with dementia, which is probably unquestionably stressful if you're a family member having to both deal with dementia, but also then care for someone with dementia, identified a really strong collection of traits and attitudes that built resilience and actually heightened the caregiver's sense of well-being. So these were, there's actually a few good coping strategies, focusing on the positive, self-efficacy, well, we talked a little bit about that, an internal locus of control, I've talked a little bit about that, being fully engaged in daily life activities, seeking and embracing a challenge, and strong social support. And through that, you can gain resilience and enjoy lower stress, more confidence, and better mental health. That's what this show's about, after all. The Mental Health Hour, right here on Teachers Talk Radio. There's also an unexpected set of tactics I wanted to raise. What do you think of these? So I came across this, an influential set of studies in the 1990s by American psychologist George Bonanno. It's a fun name, isn't it? George Bonanno. Does he like, I was going to make a joke about bananas, but I thought, do you know what? This is a serious show about mental health. So let's bracket the humor, particularly if it's unfunny, and keep focused on the psychology. So examine coping mechanisms of people who had endured significant stress, but managed to maintain good health. And their resilience was admirable, but how they were able to maintain well-being was really surprising. And he actually coins the term coping ugly. The strategies that they used were exaggerating how well they'd behaved under stress, refusing to entertain negative thoughts, and laughing it off. Bit of humor. It's an underrated strategy. I really believe that. It's an underrated strategy. While some psychologists might have called this denial, the jokes weren't always in good taste. Humor can lessen the pain of a stressful event. So that's how you do it. So as ugly coping demonstrates, this is his term, when you're under stress, you don't feel guilty about unconventional means of coping. You build up your buffers and be confident, because everyone's buffer to stress is individual, right? I suppose we've all got an alarm system the physiology of stress is the same for most people, but the psychological buffers that we build up are quite individual. A lot like teaching, right? Unless you teach at the Michaela School, where there's the set way, or a Harris School, I think. Actually, yeah, if you teach at either of those schools, a Harris School or a Michaela School, do you have quite a set and rigid structure that you follow as a teacher, firstly? And secondly, does that feed into your psychological coping mechanisms? Are they set for you? I want to know your thoughts. And if you teach in an international school, how are you coping? What are you doing? Let me know in the comments box. So that's the resilient personality. In the second part of today's show, I wanted to talk about then some other coping mechanisms that might or might not be helpful. And I think the one that I wanted to talk with you about is being perfectly imperfect. The idea that you can cope with stress by having realistic standards, and let's call it the relief of realistic standards. The relief of realistic standards. So we'll talk more shortly on Teachers Talk Radio.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
You are listening to the Sunday Breakfast Show with Phin. I hope you're okay. I hope you're well. I hope you're enjoying the final Sunday of half term, if that is indeed what you are up to. Whatever you're doing, it would be lovely to hear from you wherever you are in the world. It's always a pleasure keeping you company on Teachers Talk Radio. We're talking stress in the classroom and outside of it. We've talked for the first bit of today's show a little bit about the resilient personality and how to de-stress there. What about this idea that you can be perfectly imperfect? Is your best never good enough? Is your best never good enough? That's what I want to know. So the demanding standards of perfectionism can really drain the joy out of life, can't it? And keep your stress levels really high. So is it time to give yourself a break? Well, we've all had, some of us anyway, half term. What have you been doing? And is it something that you can then essentially begin to reframe? Because perfectionism is rewarded in the classroom, both from our students, but also as teachers. I think there is a learned anxiety. You learn a perfectionism. Either you have it to begin with, this drive to have perfection, or you learn it. This needs to be perfect. You must do the best lesson. That is a learned trait, isn't it, in teacher training? And it's not always healthy, right? Because yes, on the one hand, people who care about high standards in any walk of life are likely to be achievers, and perfectionist teachers are going to be probably quite successful in the classroom for that reason. But holding ourselves to excessive high standards might become highly stressful. Do you not think? So I suppose this is the perfectionism debate. Yes, is perfectionism always bad for us? Well, yes and no. A 2003 study by American psychologist Kenneth Rice made a distinction between adaptive and maladaptive perfectionism in people with high standards. So what do you think about this? So an adaptive trait helps us fit into our environment in a really positive way. So in this case, having high standards, but also being able to cope when we fall short. Maladaptive traits, though, cause problems such as being highly distressed by a perceived failure. Brené Brown, you heard of her. She does a lot on the psychology of vulnerability. So Brené Brown, check her out, an American therapist, I think, and a researcher in psychology. She said, understanding the difference between healthy striving and perfectionism is critical. So there's a healthy striving, and that's got to be the gold, right? Whereas, and there I go again, jumped straight into it. Perfectionism 101. It's got to be the gold. Well, they should change it. It's got to be the silver in the classroom. So there's a difference, and there could be a healthy difference. So Canadian psychologist Paul Hewitt doesn't actually think perfectionism is any way adaptive, points out that it increases our risk of mental illness, including depression, and can actually heighten other anxieties as well. Meanwhile, a British study, 2003, I've got this one here, found that people most at risk of hopelessness and distress were those who combined perfectionism with avoidance coping. So that's dealing with problems by ignoring rather than confronting them. And that combination was I don't want to say deadly combination because that's an exaggeration, although there are studies to suggest that stress can actually cause health conditions that could eventually kill you. I think there are links between some morbid topic to talk about on a Sunday, but it's the reality, isn't it? There are links between stress and certain heart issues. Again, not a doctor. This isn't medical advice, just saying that there's a correlation there, say some studies. And that's then touching on this then, the combination of impossible standards and avoidant behavior causes stress and depression. So as I was researching this bit of the show, I came across quite a variety. I mean, there's pop psychology out there, there's research psychology, there's clinical psychology, and psychologists' opinions differ as to whether perfectionism can ever be a positive attribute. So some are saying, yes, it can, and others are saying, no, it can't. But taken together, I guess that's what we've got to do. You've got to look at all the evidence taken together. It suggests that perfectionism has a tendency to make it harder to cope with the stresses of life, right? Stresses of the classroom. So what can you do? What can we do as teachers? Again, I'm not an expert in this. I know a thing or two about mental health. I've taught psychology for 10 years. I'm trained to teach mindfulness, but I'm not a therapist. But here are some suggestions from what some people in the classroom and outside of it have found helpful. So when people are pressuring you to be perfect, our best protection is to create appropriate boundaries and to be assertive, right? So if the perfectionism is coming from within, then you can do the following. It is suggested. Prioritize based on your values. So trying to do everything perfect is hugely stressful. So save your high standards for the things that matter to you most. This show, for example, is what matters to me a lot. So I spent a bit of time researching it. Made a few mistakes already. I mean, we started 25 minutes late, so that says it all. Technical issues. We're sorted now, and it's a real pleasure to keep you company on a Sunday. Get comfortable with the idea of experimenting. That's the second thing. So taking risks, making mistakes, doesn't need to be a disaster. And it can actually be a positive learning experience in the process. Be process smart. That's the next thing. The majority of your payoff tends to happen fairly early in the process. After that, the benefit to effort ratio starts to decline. And at some point, it stops being worthwhile. So process smart is key. Reward yourself for imperfect achievements. For instance, it may be better to meet a deadline with a highly less than perfect product than spend so long getting it right that you don't deliver it at all. What do they call it? Procrastination by perfection. Find role models again. It's another suggestion. Same as with the resilient personality. So how do you know? How do you know what to do? Well, you could look to others who might have similar goals but seems to struggle less. And when facing a challenge, ask yourself or them how they would tackle it. Because we've all got to learn to tolerate a level of imperfection. And I guess that's the idea. Stress-saving cue cards, I've just thought, might be a useful one. Now, I know a whole variety of teachers that put sort of motivational quotes in their classroom that just keep them going. You know, things like, I'm only human, We all make mistakes, or if I've done my best, that's the best I can do. My best is good enough. It's okay to make mistakes. Having an off day doesn't make you a failure. Any of those things, right? Could work. Might work. You could try it. Possibly. Shall we do the perfectionism quiz? So which of you are these? If you're just waking up on a Sunday morning, I've got 3 questions for you. So question 1. So 3 questions for you. Just note the answers in your head. There are 3 options for each. Just try and remember, or note it down, A, B, or C for each one. Just 3. And I'll do it with you. I'm pretty sure I know the answer to my one. So question 1. Which of these 3 statements do you agree with the most? A, I really want the people I care about to succeed. B, the more I succeed, the more people around me expect. C, I can't relax until I've got something perfect. Where are you on that? A, B, or C? Second one. A, B, or C? Where are you on this? A, I can't be bothered with people who won't do their best. B, it's difficult to measure up to people's expectations of me. And C, it makes me uncomfortable when I've made a mistake. A, B, or C? Finally, I don't tolerate people who let me down. That's A. Which do you agree with most? B, people don't say it, but my mistakes really upset them. Or C, I must always work to my full potential. A, B, or C? When we come back, we'll talk about which one I might be, and what the A statements indicate, what the B statements indicate, and what the C statements indicate. Right here, live on Teachers Talk Radio. We got 20 minutes left of today's show. We'll talk more very shortly.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
So which one are you? A, B, or C? Well, as you might expect, A statements indicate other-orientated perfectionism. So you expect perfection in others. So you make your relationships less stressful by developing your forgiveness skills. That's the solution to that. B statements, socially prescribed perfectionism. Other people expect perfection from you, so you can draw actually some healthier boundaries by improving your assertiveness skills. And lastly, C statements, self-orientated perfectionism. You set your self-perfect standards, so you can actually then de-stress, which is the main topic of today's show. You can de-stress by being more tolerant of yourself. No one's perfect. That's it. That's all you got to do. Thoughts about that? A, B, or C? Interesting, right? Do I share where I am? You can probably guess. I suppose the other thing that can help in terms of de-stressing and perfectionism is developing self-compassion, right? Becoming your own comforter, because sometimes people aren't going to do it for you, right? So I think, as I've highlighted on today's show, we can sometimes be our own worst enemy in the classroom as a teacher, right? We can beat ourselves up for the smallest thing. That lesson went wrong. And as it turns out, it's difficult not to feel stressed if we berate ourselves for every mistake or failing, right? So it might be worth trying a series of exercises to help you treat yourself compassionately. I'm going to try some of these this week, I think. The final little bit of today's show, we could talk about those. Because when you feel stressed, you probably do need comfort, right? Yes, we all feel stressed. Yes, it's a fact of life. But you probably do also need comfort, right? Does that make sense? So if that's the case, the first person to comfort you, at least in the classroom, is yourself. Now, 2005 British study found that self-compassion, so this is having that forgiving attitude towards ourselves that a kind person would show to others, actually deactivates the alarm system. So giving yourself compassion is key to de-stressing. And there are probably 3 major routes that many people agree are useful in developing this. Kirsten Neff does a huge amount of research. She's an American psychologist, identifies 3 components that can help keep your stress levels down. Self-kindness. So we value showing kindness to others, but often say things to ourselves that we'd never say to anyone else, like, you idiot. So we say that to ourselves. Actually, if we treat ourselves with the compassion we extend to others, we're likely to feel much better, right? Second one, common humanity. Everyone faces challenges in life. So rather than feeling isolated by our errors and problems, seeing them as a sign of, what do I just want to say there? It's not a sign of, a sign of shared strength, a sign that we share a great deal with other people. And actually that insight can comfort us by making us feel more connected to the world around us. Interesting, right? And then lastly, mindfulness. So we don't always recognize how hard we're being on ourselves. Some of us even find it hard to notice how upset we're feeling. So just taking a moment to acknowledge our feelings with the respect that they deserve is key. 1, 2, and 3. Simple as 1, 2, 3, ABC. Gentleness and awareness of our own feelings can make us feel better and able to cope. And that feeling is the foundation of managing stress. Now, I think I've talked about this psychologist before, Paul Gilbert. He developed compassion-focused therapy. I believe he is still alive. Don't quote me on it. Should have really researched that. But in the final bit of today's show, I thought I'd talk about this sort of compassion-focused idea that you might want to choose to employ in the classroom. As I say, I am probably the least passionate person for myself, least compassionate person for myself. I think, probably. Yeah, I hold very, how to describe it? Yeah, just not very compassionate for myself. So this is quite appealing. He posits that some people find it particularly difficult to manage their stress levels because they've got an overactive threat detection system. I think I might have that. So they identify stressors more quickly than the average person. Gilbert then recommends the following things to help you feel more relaxed. So compassionate attention. Focus on memories of giving or receiving kindness or times when your positive qualities shone. So direct your attention to thoughts that make you feel warm and safe. Compassionate reasoning. So avoid dwelling on feelings of shame and self-criticism. So instead, use logic to find more compassionate interpretations of your situation and actions. Compassionate behavior. So when you have to do something stressful, give yourself plenty of private encouragement. So in particular, focus on the process rather than the task. So appreciate the efforts you make, no matter what the result. Compassionate imagery. So picture a compassionate figure that gives you the support you need, human, animal, divine, whichever feels meaningful to you. Compassionate feeling. So that's work on cultivating compassionate emotions for yourself and others. And finally, compassionate sensation. So become aware, or at least more aware, of how your body feels when you're feeling compassion. So for instance, do your shoulders drop? Do your facial muscles relax? It's easy for you to say. By recognizing the physical experience, you'll be better able to understand your emotions, which makes it much easier to actually develop your compassion skills. Thoughts on that? That's all from Paul Gilbert. Or you could try this. Why don't we finish with this? Couple of self-compassion exercises. a visualization exercise, or a self-compassion break. Either of those. So a 2008 study found this exercise can sometimes work. You picture a figure that represents ideal compassion, so human or non-human. And you then just allow yourself to feel the loving kindness that's there for you. That's all you do. How about that? I'm sort of doing it now. What they found when they tried it in a study in 2008 was that subjects actually reported feeling better afterwards, better sense of well-being. And that was linked to the levels of stress, the hormone cortisol dropping significantly. So when we're feeling stressed, the more kindness we can show ourselves, the easier it is going to be to manage feelings, right? Maybe try that. Or this one. This is a self-compassion exercise recommended by Kirsten Neff. You identify the feeling you're suffering. So you use the phrase, this is stress, this is painful. You remind yourself of common humanity. So you tell yourself everyone suffers from time to time. And you rest your hands on your heart or adopt a comforting pose. And you say something like, may I be compassionate to myself, or may I have patience and strength, or another affirmation, this moment shall pass. It's that's quite similar, isn't it, to what am I thinking of? The serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change. Change the things I can, have the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. 3. All things come in threes. 1, 2, and 3. What do you think of that? It's an interesting one. One worth thinking about, quite possibly. Food for thought indeed. I will be back, I hope, next week at the same time. Let's see, though. You never know. The gremlins might be out again. But it's been an absolute pleasure joining you on this Sunday morning. It always is. Thank you so much for joining me. But the conversation is not finished. You can, of course, listen to this show again on Teachers Talk Radio or wherever you get your podcasts, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen again. And yes, you can choose to listen again or listen to another show. We've got a whole host of shows coming up this week on a whole variety of topics. So feel free to join the conversation at a time of your choosing. Keep us on in the background, fall asleep to us. That might work. I know many in fact, have fallen asleep to this show that I've been broadcasting. So you can ultimately, choose how you listen, choose where you're listening and what you're doing. Ultimately, that is the show for you. There we are. What a way to finish. It's been an absolute pleasure joining you and keeping you company this Sunday morning. I will see you next week, I hope, at the same time. Coming up, I believe it's Points of View. Check us out, ttradio.org. Follow us on the socials. You know what to do. Over and out then. See you next week, right here on Teach.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.